I like granulated garlic and allspice. And we have allspice here, but we don't have the granulated garlic, so I brought it from home.
Did they have it dried back then?
Yeah, you can dry anything. That's what you do at the very end of your oven. You work really hard, and I don't think I got into the cost of fuel. You're not going to waste it, so at the very end you use it to dry stuff. Things from your garden, if you have them, herbs. In the winter there's always wet mittens and socks, right? There are more trees in Portsmouth now than there were when the first Europeans came here. That's because for 10 to 12,000 years, the Native Americans would come here every summer, and this is where they grew their field crops. And you don't want trees growing in the middle of your cornfield, do you? So we have always had to import our wood to Portsmouth, and if you have to ship it in, more expensive, and you have to worry about supply and demand. There are going to be shortages. That's one reason why when we decided to put together the food history program, I was on the committee, and we, because we talk about the whole of history here in Connections, but that's a kind of a broad subject, so we wanted to cut it down a little bit. So we decided we would concentrate on the end of the 18th, beginning of the 19th century, because this is a 1780 hearth. And here in Portsmouth, because it's a big city, early on, that means we're going to get the new inventions and the new discoveries early, right? So one of those ones that's going to be really good to get a hold of if you have a problem with getting your fuel. It would be better if I did it right-handed, because my right hand is steadier and stronger. Is that I refer to this as the SUV of heating and cooking behind me. It's big and impressive. I could cook enough here to probably feed most of Portsmouth. But I can stay here in the summer with it up to the 80s with just a fan behind me, because most of the heat is going to go up the chimney. So it's hugely, hugely wasteful. So, now being a knitter by trade, by avocation, I have figured out with my just about where the slots are going to be on here, so that I can get it through the slots. Back in the good old days, measurements were whatever it happened to fall on the current King of England, or at least for the English-speaking people it was. That's one reason we have this, because they didn't standardize things like tablespoons and cups until very recently, like 100 years ago. So you weighed things. That was one reason. Other considerations. Do you guys know how to make pound cakes? Mm-hmm. Okay, let me ask the younger people. No. I'm just gonna do it for a while. Okay, to make a pound cake, I need butter, sugar, flour, and eggs. For a pound cake, how much butter do you think I need? Pound. Yep. Okay. How much sugar do you think I need? How much flour?
A pound.
And how much eggs? Do you usually weigh your eggs?
About a pound.
Yeah. Eggs, chickens lay eggs from this size to that size. We're used to going to the store and we get those large eggs, right? But you can see why just specifying how many eggs you need is not going to get you very far if you've got such a wide variety to choose from. Where's my little sprocket hole there? There it is. Yeah. So, I'll tell you right now, since I translate period recipes into modern stuff for people that aren't used to doing things like that, that I moved my thing on me. That's a bad problem when you have somebody else in your kitchen and move stuff around. Obviously that has to be there. No, I just got more air into it. Fires need air to breathe, just like we do. So if I want it more, I can actually go, and it will drag and break.
You can also use your hands.
Yeah, I could. I don't need it right now, thankfully.
Wood box.
Okay, say goodbye to my pork roast.
Bye.
There it goes. Yoo-hoo! Unlike the lady here, I do have a watch. So, chickens in the 18th century were not the Arnold Schwarzenegger hybrids that we use today. And instead of high-grade laying mash, do you know what they ate? Bugs and slugs out of the garden. If you're an 18th century chicken and they stop feeding you grain, guess what?
You have issues.
You're headed to the table. They're getting you fat for the table. So, they estimated that 10 to 12 eggs would make a pound in those days. Modern large eggs that we use, 6 equal a pound. So when I'm translating recipes, if I know it hasn't been altered, the first thing I usually do is cut the eggs in half. Which is fine if it's an even number. It gets a little hairy when it's odd. You have to kind of make it a couple times and say, do I need that egg or don't I need that egg? And it used to be back in the good old days when I was younger that they actually sold small, medium, and large eggs and you could have fiddled. But you can't do that anymore. Yeah. So, I'll talk about anything. Who wants to talk about something? So what do you think?
So what are you going to have with your pork?
I'm going to have the pot roasted vegetables that I cooked up. At first I was going to make an apple crisp, but I decided that having the vegetables would be more important. Yeah.
Where do you serve the food then? And once it's all cooked, what do you
This
do?
is
Do you
my
eat
food
it?
I brought in. It goes home.
It goes home.
Yeah. The museum maintains staples. I could make Indian flapjacks and stuff till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not exciting.
Yeah.
Some places have their own farms and they produce their own meats. We do have vegetables, but you know. And some places like the Pilgrims, that's one of their perks. They get to eat the stuff that they ate, but they're doing those are all reproduction buildings. The curatorial takes a dim view of us having food and eating. You know, we don't even allow you to drink water in the building. Here you can do it. I'm slapping around all this stuff. And places like Williamsburg, they have demonstrations where they make the food and they actually put it out on display and then they throw it away. Yeah, I know. Well, if it's been sitting out and especially in Virginia in the heat with the flies, no, I wouldn't want to eat it anyway. So here, most of us bring in our own food and we cook it and we take it home, and it gives us a chance to show a different variety of stuff that we're eating. And besides, that's one of the perks of killing yourself here. This is hard work. Cooking like this is hard work. The kettle that I roasted my vegetables in weighs about 14 pounds empty. And you put a 9-pound ham in that and you water and you heft it up and down on the S-hooks. I only cook 1 day a week now. And we only are open part of the season. Now I'm a little out of shape because I had a knee replaced, so I only came back 2 weeks ago. But this is my lifting arm.
Wow.
I decided our foremothers were women of great fortitude and mean right hooks. This is one of the things when we do strolls, for instance, and I make mincemeat and I'm grating up raw beef suet to put in it and stuff. And people are saying, fat, fat, fat. Unless you're very wealthy, you walk most places. Most people can't. Horses are expensive and they're hard to keep. You don't have a place, you know. So you walk, you do hard physical labor. Let me ask, can I leave the fire burning it with no one to watch it? So at night when everyone's asleep, is there any fire? So in the middle of the winter, is there any heat? Every room of the house will go below freezing, at least here in New England, during a lot of the winter. You need calories to keep your metabolism going. They estimate that the average person in the 18th century needed at least 3,000 calories a day. If you're doing stuff where you're exposed to the elements more, sailors got 5,000 calories was the traditional thing. The biggest one I found so far is the guys who are bringing the mast trunks in. They cut down the trees in just after they bring in the hay, and they limb them, but you can't, we're talking stuff that's up to 240 feet long. You're not going to haul that over bare ground. So they go home and they wait until there's a good snowpack down. And then they go back into the woods and they work 6 days a week in teams of 8 men and 30 oxen. Hello, Peter Cook, how you doing?
I'm doing warmer.
Come on in and have a seat. I just put the pork loin on to roast and my vegetables are all done. I'm explaining calories in the 18th century.
I suppose you all wondered why I called this meeting. Good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you again. So what happens is they go out to bring that. All they're going to do is they're going to haul these masts down to the river. You can't put it in the water yet because it's frozen. So they're going to work 6 days a week. They have a central fire that they actually keep burning. They pay somebody to actually keep it burning. All those limbs they took off the trees, right? And they make open face shelters that face in towards it. And they put hay on the snow and then the blankets down. I've got very good accounts of what they had for food. 8,000 calories a day. I'll point out that's what Michael Phelps and Lance Armstrong eat when they're training. There was a small study that I heard about, and I haven't seen any more, that suggested that if Americans turned down their central heating and walked more, that maybe you could have the occasional hot fudge sundae. But they need the kind of food that we don't because of the way they're living. Food is a really interesting way to look at history because, first of all, it's something we can all relate to. But if you study the stories behind the food and how they approach the food and how they cook the food and how they preserve it, it tells you a whole lot about how people are living at that time period. I'll talk about anything. Tina knows I'll talk about anything. I'll just keep going.
Being on the coast, they do a lot of fish.
Okay, here's where we get into food prejudice. Back in the days that I'm talking about, we're basically Englishmen. Yeah, we did fight that war and seem to have, well, we got them to sign the treaty that says we're separate now. They don't really believe it. That's why we're going to have the War of 1812. They just figure we're busy with the French, we'll let that simmer for a while and then we'll go back and take care of them and mop them up. So anyway, in England and in Europe, the food hierarchy, meat, fresh fish, shellfish. You've heard these things about they wouldn't eat lobster. It's not that way. It's that we've got a hierarchy. Think about it. If you're going to have a really important dinner party, you need to impress somebody, you're probably not going to serve them hot dogs. It doesn't mean you don't eat hot dogs. It just means that's not the impressive food you're going to cook. Ironically, today it could be lobster. But, of course, if you're Catholic, you have to eat, you can't eat meat on Friday, so you have to eat fish, right? Now, they haven't been Catholic for, generations in England. But if you look at how they write about food and how they plan their food and stuff, there seems to be this thing in their heads that we should eat fish once a week. But we're not going to eat it on Friday because we don't want to be considered popish. I'm Irish Catholic, I can say that. So instead, we're going to eat it on Saturday. Now, Saturday is baking day, so I'm going to put that crock of beans in the back. I've soaked that. And hopefully, I've also soaked the dried salted codfish. Because I need something I can do fast. Hi, come on and sit. I'm talking food history here. I'm talking fish right now. So, because the codfish was never cooked before it was dried. But all you have to do is poach it for about 15 minutes and it's done. And you could eat it that way. But right now, you've got potatoes and eggs. So let's cook the potatoes. Let's mash up the stuff. Let's flake the codfish. We're going to make them into codfish balls. And we're going to fry them up in lard. So a traditional Saturday meal is baked beans and codfish balls. And if you're good congregationalists, you don't believe in having a fire on Sunday, so instead of a lavish Sunday meal, you're going to eat cold leftover baked beans and codfish balls. Go to the 19th century. We built those textile mills. We need a lot of cheap labor. Those farm families just aren't producing enough. So we send agents up into French-speaking Canada where the poor farmers there are kind of scratching out a living. We say, come south, there are plenty of jobs. You can make all kinds of money. You don't have to worry if there's an early frost. So all these French Canadians come down. And they're not making a whole lot of money, right? So the beans are cheap. But you know, we had our fish on Friday. So we're going to substitute an inexpensive meat because we got paid on Friday. So now it's going to switch. So the tradition in New England for Saturday dinner is beans and hot dogs, beans and franks.
Cornbread and coleslaw.
No, brown bread and coleslaw. Yeah, you go and get that B&M thing and you, not that they did that right back then, but my in-laws, when I first married my husband almost 35 years ago, were horrified that we weren't eating beans and franks on Saturday. But of course you have it on set. And when I role play in 1943, Mrs. Tucker will tell you, well, Mr. Abbott, rest his soul, he used to be the meat cutter dear, but she's got the luncheon meats and the frankfurters and the bacon, and every Friday she got the salt pork up for the beans, right? Yeah. And when you had the church meal and you needed to make extra money, you hopped it up and you had ham and beans because you were going to make people pay for it, right?